Hi, I'm Ben Province and welcome to Show Me the Music. On today's show, I'll get to talk to Miss Robbie. Now, you may know her from her program, Welcome to Sweetie Pies, but did you know that her first love is and always will be music?
After 7 years and 9 seasons of her reality show on OWN and a long hiatus from releasing music, Miss Robbie Montgomery has a brand new EP. The record is appropriately titled Ms. Robbie's What They Call Me.
And I believe he did. Now what would I do without
To kind of learn the story behind your career up to this point, you have to go back to the early 60s, late 50s a little bit, and you kind of got your start singing in church like a lot of the greatest singers do.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and then, so your first girl group was the Ikettes, correct?
Ikettes, yes. I was 3 girls. Then we changed our name to the Ikettes. We later joined this guy, Art Lassiter.
And Art Lassiter's story, I think, is kind of incredible because he's not from here. He's from North Carolina, I believe. And so he's driving around, his car breaks down in St. Louis.
Yes.
And then he starts a career here.
Exactly.
And then you and your group get involved with him. How did that happen?
Well, he was already established as a solo artist when we met him. And then he was looking for girls to background him. And we were the Rhythmettes at that time. And then we changed our name. We went on not on the road, but we worked around the club circuit here in St. Louis. And he called us the Ikettes.
Then he has studio time booked.
Yes.
You go to the session. Ike Turner's at the session. Art Lassiter's not at the session.
Well, what happened, Ike used the same girls, which were the Ikettes. He'd had the song Fool in Love, and he wanted background on it. Well, originally, Art Lassiter was supposed to sing the lead. So Ike and Art had some type of dispute. We don't know to this day. I think it was about money. And so everybody shows up at the studio for the session, and Art doesn't show up. So Tina was a background singer with us, and she's like, at that time her name was Ann, Lil Ann. And she was like, well, Ike, I know the lead, because he had the time booked. And so he said, well, let's do it. And she went in. She was pregnant, I was pregnant, and the other girl was pregnant at that time. And we went in and recorded Fool in Love.
And that became the first
That
Ike and
became
Tina
first,
Turner
yeah,
song.
first
So you
hit.
really were there when Ike and Tina Turner started, like from the very moment.
Well, from that record on, I was there. I knew them because we would go over. Ann was singing with him as his lead vocal, his female vocalist at that time. And then when he needed the girls, that's how we all connected. So I knew them, but Ike was already working around St. Louis. We recorded the record, it hit. So he offered everybody a job that wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I was one.
Yeah.
So I took the chance.
Yeah, and you went on tour with them for a few years?
Yeah, about 8 years I stayed with him.
Wow.
And then to continue to record after I left. I had been Ikette with a million other Ikettes. And so we made a lot of records. We had a hit, Peaches and Creams, I'm Blue, and In the Midnight Hour. So we had, quite a few hits ourselves. We probably recorded 2 million songs,
Wow.
but only had a couple of hits, yeah. And then Ike recorded me as a solo artist, Robbie Montgomery, called Crazy in Love. And so I left Ikettes after 8 years and went with Dr. John.
And you were on albums with Dr. John.
Dr. John,
So
yeah.
you were, kind of a permanent part of his
Yes, yeah.
backing band. How did that all happen?
Well, and when I moved to Los Angeles, there was sort of a background clique. And we went in and out of studios all day doing background for all the artists, the ones that were making records at that time. If you could sing, we were background. Football players, Nancy Sinatra, just everybody that wanted to sing. Well, we were contracted as studio singers, and we would go in and put the background on. So in the meantime, Ahmed Erdogan, who was the president of Atlantic Records, well, we, the Ikettes, had I'm Blue on Atlantic. And so he told me about this artist that we was developing, Dr. John, out of New Orleans, and asked me would I be interested in going on the road with him.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, because that was, how you got to make a living. And that's how I made my living, doing background.
And you got to back so many great artists. I have a list
So
here.
many,
And I kind of wondered if you could tell me a little bit, a memory of working with each one.
Okay.
The Rolling Stones.
The Stones came through Dr. John. I was working with him as a night tripper. And they had us put background on, I can't remember the album, because it's been, I can't remember the album. Because a lot of times we don't know those things. But when the song comes out, it was something about Take the Mud Off Your Shoes in Virginia or something.
Okay.
I can't remember the album, but Dr. John and a girl, Tammy Lynn, who was from New Orleans, with a girl, Shirley and Lee. Shirley and Lee had a record out, Let the Good Times Roll. She was with Dr. John, and they invited me into that. Like I say, Ahmed Erdogan asked me to join them.
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder's studio work, we go in, we have a contractor and she needs girls to put the background on, and we go in and put the background. Sure. Supremes, everybody that need. See, a lot of people think that they're doing the background. Well, sometimes they do and sometimes they add to it.
Yeah. Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye, yes. We did Marvin through the same contractor. Her name was Clyde King out of Los Angeles. She got most of the contracts, and she just called the girls to go in.
Okay, and I guess it was a similar story with James Brown, Elton John,
everybody,
Pink Floyd.
yes, Pink Floyd, yes.
Yeah, and was there one lesson that you learned just from backing those artists that you've taken to your own solo music?
Well, actually, I learned a little from all of them because everybody's got a different style. And the main thing is being professional, being on time, and knowing your craft.
Mm-hmm. And so that was primarily when you were out in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, yes.
And what took you there?
With Ike and Tina, I went out with Ike and Tina. We all relocated to Los Angeles and stayed out there about 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I got in that little clique. When I was on the road, I would go on the road with Dr. John. I stayed with him about 8 years. And then when I would come home, I would do the studio work.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an amazing life,
Yes,
I would
yes.
imagine. In the 70s, you had some health problems that forced you to stop singing. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I developed sarcoidosis. I didn't know at that time. I was with Dr. John. And I would have a lot of chest pains. And finally, I would ignore it and keep going. And I don't know what happened, but eventually when I went to the doctor, my lung had collapsed. And so it was from the sarcoidosis. And I either had to stop singing or have the surgery. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to have the surgery. And I had sang so long, so I'm like, well, I'll just stop singing.
Yeah.
Moved back home to St. Louis and had a little dog, and the dog ran out in the street. I'm screaming for the dog, and my lung collapsed again. So it had been like 5 or 6 times, so the surgeon said, I advise you to have the surgery. And that's what I did. So I had stopped singing and moved back home.
And you saw the next step being, hey, I have my mother's soul food recipes. Why not start a restaurant?
Well, kind of in between when I came back to St. Louis, I wasn't singing, so I had to have a job. And I went to Jewish Hospital and trained as a dialysis technician. And I did that for maybe 7 years or something like that. And I got a salary cap. And I either had to go back to school. Well, during the times I traveled on the road, everything was segregated. So my mom had 9 kids, and I was the oldest, so I knew how to cook. And when we'd get the opportunity to rent in a motel, we called them kitchenettes, where you had a room with a little kitchen, I would do most of the cooking. And everybody thought I could really cook, which I could, because my mom was an excellent cook. So after training for the Jewish dialysis, got a salary cap, and then I was like, well, I can't go back to school. I got my family to feed. I got to keep making money. So I'm an excellent cook. So maybe this is a time for me to try my hand at cooking.
Was there ever any trepidation, like, okay, how do I become this businesswoman, the great businesswoman that you turned out to be?
Well, during my years with Ike was a great businessman. And I learned a lot of things about business. I mean, and I just applied them to my restaurant. I mean, he was adamant about being on time, being professional in everything you did. We rehearsed all the time, perfection, your wardrobe, impeccable. I mean, he had all these things, and he was a businessman. He handled his own business. Nobody booked him. He booked himself. He just did everything himself. So my years with him taught me to be business about whatever it is. It's a lemonade stand. Just make sure you got the best lemons and your lemonade is the sweetest, and people will come. And so I applied that. I knew when I moved back to St. Louis after the stint with Jewish Hospital, and I had to do something else. I mean, like, I wasn't rich. I had to keep working. So what could I do? Well, everybody thinks I'm a pretty good cook. So, I mean, nobody encouraged me. I was scared. I mean, because I knew the statistics about restaurants. So, but I believed in me. Yeah. And Mr. Strauss, the man that owns the Fox, was one of my dialysis patients. And he said, this is your dream. If you believe in it, go for it. But remember, it's your dream. Nobody's going to treat it like you. So during my time of trying to open restaurants, nothing but negativity. Nobody wants soul food. You got to do this, you got to do that. And I sort of just blocked it because I didn't want to hear that. And my heart would hurt so bad when everybody was so negative about it that I just kind of tuned it out. And I'm like, I'm going to keep walking forward. I don't care what they say. And I always say, if you got something good, people want it. Yeah. Whether it's, lemonade, soul food, music, if it's good, they want to hear it.
What was your first thought when you learned Oprah Winfrey wanted to do a show with you?
Oh, it was amazing. Well, we had the restaurants going, and this time I was on my second restaurant. And my son came to me one day and said, Mama, this man want to sit here and watch us all day. It was Cool Fire, which is a film company. And then he asked if we were interested in film. I wasn't, because I told my son, I'm running this restaurant. I ain't got time for this, because it reminded me of being an entertainer. I've been there, done that. I don't want to do it. So my son, come on, Mama, come on. So then I thought, well, I can't afford the advertisement, so it would be good advertisement. And they shopped it, and then when they came back and said, Oprah was interested, I still didn't want to do it. But like I say, I thought, well, this is great advertisement for the business. And so it went on for 7 years. So on the show, they was like looking for different storylines. So, Miss Robbie, why don't you go back in the studio and sing? I'm like, well, that's not a bad idea. It's been like a long time since I tried. And went back in and got the bug. So I tried to start back.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways your career's come full circle, because you started out recording songs you wrote,
yes,
that you were fronting the group.
Yes.
And now here we are in 2018, and the new record is called Miss Robbie's What They Call Me. It's your first solo record ever, correct?
Ever, yes. My first solo EP.
It's very entrenched in the roots of rock and roll, whether that's country, whether that's jazz,
yes,
whether that's blues, or whether that's soul.
Yes.
And I don't think you can really narrow it down to one genre.
True, I was really trying to hit the pocket of people my age and a little, a little younger, a little up, so I can get a little. I did 3 cover country songs, Barbara Mandrell, Tanya Tucker, and K.T. Osland. I did 3 country. I wrote 2. And a young lady by the name of Shirley Matthews in Los Angeles wrote one of the songs for the Ikettes. And they banded it back there. The one's called Ain't My Stuff Good Enough. It was terrible back then. Now it's not bad enough.
Which are the 2 that you wrote?
I wrote What Will I Do Without You, which is a song that I wrote about my family and people that I love, and about God, just about everything, chicken, turkey, what will I do without you? And Come Back and Finish, which was about my first boyfriend.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, I enjoyed it.
Miss Robbie's What They Call Me is available on CD and on streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music.
Well, that'll do it for today's show. I want to give a big thank you to my guest, Miss Robbie. And on behalf of the entire crew, I'm Ben Province, asking you to show me the music.